Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our Recall Triad for pages 390 to 410 in the second part of N.T. Wright's book, Paul and the Faithfulness of God. And that lesson had quite a bit of content on ecclesia as sign, so we certainly do need a Recall Triad to kind of encapsulate the heart of the lesson, but it was a very powerful lesson. So we're going to take a look at this recap triad of ecclesia as sign of sacred space for Paul. And in block 1, we'll look at the ecclesia as the temple of unity. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:16, Christ is not divided. He posits the sign of belonging in 1 Corinthians 3:21 to 23. Members are unified in Messiah's mind. Ecclesia is Paul's central worldview sign. For his entire Noema worldview, ecclesia becomes the central sign for his Noema ordering of all signs. On block 2, the ecclesia also is the sign of the kingdom of holiness, and that is through the positing of God's sovereignty by the church, and through the church bearing the cross of Christ, and through sharing in the Spirit's vocation of the gospel. So you've got the Father's sovereignty, the Son's cross, and the Spirit's vocation of gospel. It's an ecclesia church that always turns outward toward the world in order to fill its Noema ordering of signs in a practical way. It does not turn inward on itself, it turns outward toward the world. Now, ecclesia as temple of unity and ecclesia as kingdom of holiness leads to ecclesia as fellowship of witness. The church exists as a sign moment of unity, says N.T. Wright. It refines itself always as the Messiah's body. It is the sign pillar of stabilization in its practice of agape self-giving. It's a fellowship of the cross as sign. The cross of Christ becomes a central sign for the character of the ecclesia church. It's a church of agape self-giving. That becomes its stabilization feature, its stabilization character. But for Paul, the ecclesia called out ones, they become the new temple. They become the new sacred space, and he sees in the resurrected Christ the returning doxa gloria of God has returned to the temple, but not the temple made with human hands, not the temple made with stone and mortar, but the doxa gloria of the living God has returned to the temple as the ecclesia called out ones who make up the body of the Messiah, the ecclesia church. And that church functions as the new temple and as a fellowship of holiness that is a foretaste of the doxa glorious kingdom to come, and as a fellowship of agape self-giving, a fellowship based in the identity of agape self-giving. So Paul's new understanding results in rewriting signs, but it also results in completely renaming the sacred space of covenant with God. The covenant with Yahweh is redefined in a new sacred space as ecclesia rather than the concrete temple. Sacred space becomes ecclesia, fellowship of the called out ones who've been called by the call of Christ, elected by the Father, called by the Son, predestined by the Spirit toward doxa glory, elected by the Father, called by the Son, and predestined by the Holy Spirit. That's going to wrap up our Recall Triad for pages 390 to page 410 on ecclesia as central sign of sacred space.